What I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you think you know about marriage and respect. By the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the quietest person in the room can deliver the loudest message. If you're ready to hear how one moment of humiliation led to the most unexpected comeback, make sure to hit that subscribe button and stick around until the very end. Trust me, you won't see this coming. My name is David Chen, and I'm a 34-year-old software engineer living in Denver, Colorado. For the past 8 years, I've been married to Sarah, a marketing executive who comes from what you'd call old money, the kind of family that owns half the downtown real estate and has their name on museum wings. I grew up in a modest 2-bedroom house in Chinatown where my immigrant parents ran a small restaurant. The contrast between our backgrounds never seemed to matter when we were dating, but marriage has a way of revealing things that love can sometimes overlook. Sarah and I met at a tech conference in Austin back in 2016. She was representing her firm, pitching to startups, and I was there showcasing an app I'd developed. There was something magnetic about her confidence, the way she commanded a room without raising her voice. She approached me after my presentation, genuinely interested in the technical aspects of my work. Most people in her circles saw coding as some mysterious black magic, but Sarah asked intelligent questions about architecture and scalability. That night, over craft cocktails at a rooftop bar overlooking Lady Bird Lake, we talked until sunrise about everything from artificial intelligence to her favorite hiking trails in the Rockies. The early years were good, really good. We bought a beautiful Tudor-style house in Cherry Hills Village, one of Denver's most prestigious neighborhoods. Sarah handled the interior design, filling it with antiques from her grandmother's estate and modern art pieces that cost more than my parents' annual income. I didn't mind. Seeing her happy made me happy. I was making good money at a fintech startup, and her family seemed to accept me, though I always felt like I was being quietly evaluated at every family gathering. But success has a way of changing people, and somewhere along the line, Sarah began to see our different backgrounds not as complementary, but as a hierarchy. It started small, correcting my pronunciation of wine regions, suggesting I needed a better tailor, making little comments about my simple tastes when I'd choose a burger over foie gras. I told myself she was just trying to help me fit into her world, but looking back, I can see it was something else entirely. The Whitfield family, Sarah's family, owned Whitfield Properties, a commercial real estate empire built by her great-grandfather in the 1920s. Every Thanksgiving, Christmas, and summer gathering happened at their sprawling estate in Cherry Creek, a 12,000-square-foot mansion that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Sarah's father, Richard, was the kind of man who wore golf attire even to casual dinners and spoke in business metaphors. Her mother, Patricia, was all pearls and passive aggression, delivering cutting remarks with a smile that never reached her eyes. Sarah's brother Marcus had joined the family business straight out of Wharton and treated every conversation like a boardroom negotiation. At these gatherings, I often felt like a visitor rather than family. They'd discuss their various properties, vacation homes in Aspen and Martha's Vineyard, charity galas, and country club politics. When they remembered to include me, it was usually with a question about the computer stuff I did, spoken with the same tone one might use to ask about a child's hobby. I played along, smiled politely, and focused on supporting Sarah, who seemed to thrive in this environment. The incident that changed everything happened on a Saturday evening in late October. The aspen trees were painting the mountainsides gold, and there was that crisp quality to the air that makes Denver autumns magical. Sarah had invited her family over for what she called a casual dinner party, though nothing involving the Whitfields was ever truly casual. She'd spent days preparing, hiring caterers, arranging flowers, and making sure everything was perfect. I'd had a particularly challenging week at work. Our startup was in the middle of a major product launch, and I'd been pulling 16-hour days, debugging code, and managing a team of developers spread across 3 time zones. I was exhausted, but excited to finally relax and spend time with family. I wore what I thought was appropriate: dark jeans, a button-down shirt, and a blazer Sarah had picked out for me months earlier. The evening started pleasantly enough. Richard was in good spirits, having just closed a major deal downtown. Patricia complimented the wine selection, a vintage from their own collection naturally. Marcus brought his latest girlfriend, a pharmaceutical sales rep named Amber, who seemed genuinely nice and a bit overwhelmed by the family dynamics. We gathered in the dining room with its crystal chandelier and oil paintings of Sarah's ancestors looking down disapprovingly from gilded frames. Conversation flowed through the usual topics: market trends, upcoming elections, the new restaurant that had opened in Lodo. I contributed when I could, but mostly listened, comfortable in my role as the supportive husband. That's when Richard brought up the subject that would trigger everything. "Sarah mentioned you're working on some kind of app launch," he said, cutting into his prime rib with surgical precision. "What exactly does your company do again?" I explained our platform, a financial technology solution that helped small businesses manage cash flow and access microloans. It wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful work that could genuinely help people. As I spoke, I noticed the familiar glazed look that came over their faces when I discussed anything technical. "So it's like a bank?" Patricia asked, looking confused. "Not exactly," I said patiently. "We're more of a technology platform that connects small businesses with lending partners. Think of it as David always overcomplicates things." Sarah interrupted with a laugh that had an edge to it. "It's basically just another app, Mom. Nothing too exciting." The dismissive tone stung, but I let it slide. Sarah had been stressed about hosting this dinner, and I understood she might not want to get bogged down in technical explanations. But then Marcus chimed in. "Isn't the tech bubble kind of over?" he said, swirling his wine. "I mean, how many apps does the world really need? At least in real estate, you're dealing with actual assets, tangible value." There's definitely truth to that," Sarah agreed, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "I keep telling David he should consider transitioning into something more stable, maybe sales, or even joining a more established company instead of these risky startups." I looked at her surprised. We'd never discussed me changing careers. In fact, just last week she'd been excited about the potential IPO prospects for our company. But in front of her family, apparently, my work was just a phase that needed correcting. "The startup world is so unpredictable," Patricia added, nodding sympathetically at Sarah. "It must be stressful, never knowing if your husband's company will be around next year." "Oh, it is," Sarah said, and her next words hit me like a physical blow. "Sometimes I feel like I married a college student who never graduated. Always staying up late with his computers, getting excited about these projects that probably won't amount to anything. I love David, but I do worry about our future sometimes." The room went completely quiet, except for the soft jazz playing from the hidden speakers. Richard cleared his throat uncomfortably. Even Marcus looked surprised by his sister's bluntness. Amber studied her plate intently, clearly wishing she were anywhere else. I sat there, feeling like I'd been slapped. 8 years of marriage, and this was how my wife saw me, a perpetual child playing with toys. My face burned with embarrassment and anger, but I kept my voice level. "I see," I said quietly. "Well, that's certainly an interesting perspective." Sarah must have realized she'd gone too far, because she quickly tried to backtrack. "I don't mean it like that, honey. No, it's fine," I said, standing up from the table. "I think I understand perfectly. If you'll excuse me, I have some computer games to play upstairs." I left the dining room and went to my office, closing the door behind me. Through the walls, I could hear muffled conversation resuming, Probably Sarah making excuses for my behavior. I sat at my desk, staring at my monitors, trying to process what had just happened. The next morning, Sarah acted like nothing had occurred. She made coffee, chatted about her plans for the day, and gave me a quick kiss before heading to her Pilates class. She either didn't realize the magnitude of what she'd done, or she was hoping I'd just forgotten about it. But I hadn't forgotten. Her words kept playing in my mind. I feel like I married a college student who never graduated. I spent the day thinking, really thinking, about our relationship. About all the small comments, the subtle put-downs, the way she'd gradually repositioned herself as the responsible adult managing a childish husband. I thought about the life I'd built, the work I was passionate about, and the person I'd become in this marriage. By evening, I'd made a decision. When Sarah came home from her book club, I was waiting in the living room with a manila folder and my laptop. "Hey, babe," she said, dropping her purse on the console table. "How was your day? Still sulking about last night?" "Actually, I had a very productive day," I said. "I wanted to thank you for the wake-up call." She looked puzzled. "What do you mean?" "You were right last night. I have been acting like a college student, so I decided to do something about it." I opened the folder and handed her the first document. Her eyes widened as she read. "David, what is this?" "That's the letter of intent from Meridian Capital. They're acquiring our company for $847 million. My equity stake comes out to just over $23 million pre-tax." Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she held the paper. This is real?" "Very real. The deal closes next Friday." I opened my laptop and turned it toward her. "And this is the employment contract they've offered me as VP of Product Development. Base salary of $350,000, plus equity and bonuses. Very stable company, as you can see. They've been around for 60 years. She sank into the armchair across from me, still staring at the documents. "Why didn't you tell me about this before?" "I was planning to surprise you last night, actually. But then you made it clear how you really felt about my computer games, so I figured I should handle this like the adult you wish I could be." I handed her another set of papers. "What's this one?" "Divorce papers. I had my attorney draw them up today." The color drained from her face. "David, you can't be serious." "I'm very serious. You see, I realized something today. I don't want to be married to someone who sees me as a project to be fixed, or who's embarrassed by what I do for a living, especially not someone who would humiliate me in front of her family to score points. I didn't mean, Sarah, you told your family that you felt like you married a child, that my work probably won't amount to anything, that you worry about our future because of my career choices." I kept my voice calm, but firm. "Those aren't words you say in anger. Those are things you've been thinking for a long time." She started crying then, real tears, not the strategic kind she sometimes used during arguments. "David, please, I get nervous around my family. I say stupid things. You know how they can be." "I do know how they can be. But I also know that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them. And last night, you showed me exactly what you think of me and my work." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the manicured lawn we'd never used, the garden Sarah had designed but never maintained herself. "I'm not asking for half of anything. I don't want the house. I don't want alimony. I just want to be free to find someone who actually respects what I do and who I am. But the money, yes, the money. Funny how that changes things, isn't it?" I turned back to face her. 3 months ago, you would have been thrilled about this acquisition, but you had to hear it the day after you publicly dismissed my career as a childish hobby. Sarah wiped her eyes, smearing her carefully applied makeup. "David, I love you. I made a mistake, but we can work through this. Sarah, here's what's going to happen. You're going to call your family and explain that your childish husband just became a multimillionaire through one of those apps that probably won't amount to anything. You're going to tell them about the divorce and about how you lost a good man because you couldn't resist the urge to make yourself look better at his expense." She stared at me, perhaps seeing me clearly for the first time in years. The quiet, accommodating husband was gone, replaced by someone who knew his own worth. "And then," I continued, "you're going to sign those papers, and we're both going to move on to find people who actually deserve us." The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, asset division, and awkward encounters as we worked out the details of our separation. Sarah tried several times to reconcile, but the damage was too deep. Trust, once broken in such a fundamental way, is nearly impossible to rebuild. The story of my acquisition spread quickly through Sarah's social circle. I heard through mutual friends that the Whitfield family was stunned, not just by the money, but by how completely they'd misjudged me. Richard apparently called me one hell of a poker player for keeping the deal quiet, though he failed to understand that I hadn't been playing games at all. 6 months later, I moved to Austin, where our company was merging with Meridian's Texas operations. I bought a modern condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lady Bird Lake, the same view Sarah and I had shared on our first night together all those years ago. But this time, I was seeing it through different eyes. The work at Meridian was challenging and rewarding. I was building financial tools that could genuinely help people, working with a team that respected my expertise and vision. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not the diminished version I'd become in my marriage, but the confident professional who had impressed Sarah at that conference so long ago. I started dating again, slowly and carefully. I met Dr. Lisa Rodriguez at a charity fundraiser for financial literacy programs. She was an economics professor at UT, brilliant and passionate about her work, with no interest in changing me or managing my image. When I told her about my background, about growing up in my parents' restaurant and building my career from scratch, she was genuinely impressed rather than embarrassed. "That's incredible," she said over dinner at a small Ethiopian restaurant in East Austin. "You built something from nothing. That takes real courage." It was such a simple statement, but it meant everything to hear it from someone who understood the value of work and achievement. A year after my divorce was finalized, I got a LinkedIn message from Sarah. She'd started her own consulting firm and wanted to connect professionally. I looked at her profile photo, the same confident smile, the same carefully curated image. But I felt nothing except a distant kind of pity. She was still playing the same games, still trying to manage perceptions and climb social ladders. I didn't respond to the message. Instead, I called my parents, who were now able to retire comfortably thanks to the trust fund I'd set up for them with part of my acquisition money. My father answered on the second ring, his voice warm with happiness. "David, how's the new job going?" We talked for an hour about everything and nothing: his garden, my mother's painting classes, the new restaurant they'd discovered near their retirement community in San Diego. They never asked about Sarah anymore, understanding instinctively that chapter was closed. As I hung up the phone and looked out at the Austin skyline, I realized something profound had changed in me. The humiliation I'd felt that night at dinner had been transformed into something else entirely: self-respect. Sarah's words had been meant to diminish me, but instead, they'd awakened something I'd been suppressing for years: the knowledge of my own worth. Sometimes, the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are and how they see you. It forces you to decide whether you'll accept that version of yourself or fight for something better. I chose to fight, and I won. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt undervalued or dismissed by someone who should have supported you, I want you to know that your worth isn't determined by other people's limitations. Hit that like button if you believe in standing up for yourself. Subscribe for more real stories about overcoming life's challenges, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, sometimes the quietest person in the room is just waiting for the right moment to remind everyone exactly who they're dealing with. Until next time, Know your worth and never let anyone convince you to settle for less.